really does make a difference. And we discovered Fleischmann's margarine. We like the one made mostly with sunflower oil. You can't beat the taste. And now I know what Fleischmann's quality means. It's just one more thing for me to feel good about.
Fleischmann's margarine, because you are what you eat. The news of the day, all day long.
Coming up next, Webster.
Good morning. Who suffers next in the cutbacks in healthcare in British Columbia brought about by the desperation of the Social Credit government to balance its budget, turned its face against all deficit financing? Here to answer some of the questions, hopefully, this morning, or hopefully to answer some of the questions this morning, is Jim Nielsen, the Minister of Health in the Social Credit Valhalla in Victoria. Also on the air this morning, a factual report, I trust, on what's happening in parking lots in downtown Vancouver, particularly M-Park, where if you overpark your ticket in a lot, you're liable to be hammered with a fine, privately imposed, or have your car towed away. But first for the health cutbacks. And why did he pick on the Royal Columbian? After the break. Jim Nielsen is Minister of Health in the Social Credit Government of Victoria. Let's get down to cases right away. Why did you pick on the Royal Columbian Hospital to tell them to pay back their deficit in 1 year, and they're faced with the prospects of eliminating nearly all of elective surgery for a start, and putting an unfair burden on the poor old Royal Columbian, when the other ones apparently you're going to pick up their deficits, the other hospitals I'm talking about?
Well, we haven't picked on the Royal Columbian Hospital. In fact, we're meeting with them at 11 o'clock today to see what their problems are and how they can be resolved.
Well, you did pick on them. You told them they've got to pick up all of the deficits in 1 year. They've already saved $1 million. They've another $4 or $5 million to pick up.
It'd be a very good idea if they could pick it up in 1 year, Jack. We're going to discuss with them how perhaps that could be accomplished, or to the best of their ability to accomplish it. The Royal Columbian is running a significant deficit, and we're trying to speak with them and see if we can't perhaps capture some of that money and have a less deficit.
What do you mean capture? Make them save more?
Well, perhaps pay off some of that deficit in the next year's operation.
They've already given notice to lay off 46 people. The General has got 200 odd unfilled positions. Services are being cut back in many hospitals. And for the past 7 years, your ministry, through your various predecessors, has picked up the deficits as they came along. This year, are you going to pick up the deficits for all the hospitals?
No, not in the automatic way it was done previously, no. This is probably the root of the problem you're discussing today, that the ministries of health have picked up deficits almost in an automatic way, and it hasn't necessarily led to the best efficient management.
Does this not lead to a great deterioration in hospital service when you are so brutal in refusing to pick up necessary budgets? Because the hospitals don't go out and injure the people on the highways. The Royal Columbian runs the best intensive care trauma unit outside the General Hospital, and they tell me that they're faced with many closures of many of their services. Now, do you accept that or do you not?
Jack, if I can't accept that every hospital is run in the most efficient way, and I can't accept that there's not ways to cut down their costs, which would significantly reduce their deficits. I see no problem in investigating their procedure, their management procedure, to see if some monies can be saved. We're not going to automatically pick up deficits of hospitals and have hospitals advise us in direct or indirect ways that they're going to continue operating in the manner they choose without regard to budgets. We're definitely going to insist that budgets be met, and we'll sit down and talk to them about deficits. We'll sit down and talk to them about operations, and if necessary, we'll have someone investigate any hospital of our choice to determine if the operation is in the best.
Are you holding
manner.
a special investigation of the Royal Columbia?
No, we're not holding any investigation at the moment.
Is it not a fact that they have said, it was leaked by one of your MLA colleagues, that they're going to cut out between 50 and 100 beds, effectively wiping out all elective surgery, unless you give a little bit on the deficits they must make up in 82, 83?
Any hospital, Jack, who finds it impossible to operate in the manner the hospital is expected to operate will receive assistance from the Ministry of Health, not necessarily by picking up deficits. If necessary, perhaps they'll receive some assistance in other ways.
What other ways?
Well, perhaps we might be able to assist them in showing them how they can better operate the hospital in a more efficient way, if that's absolutely essential.
Now, take the General Hospital. What's its deficit?
They're,
About $5 million.
well, their budget's a great deal. Their budget's about 3 times that of the Royal Columbian Hospital, and I would think their deficit probably is in the 1.5% range.
But you are aware of the fact that all the big hospitals are cutting back on many of the diagnostic facilities for outpatients. These are being wiped out.
Well, they're not being wiped out, Jack. You're going to get a hospital responding to a call from the Ministry of Health about their budgets in various ways. Many of them will respond in the way that attracts most attention. There's absolutely no need for that.
These wicked doctors wicked administrators.
No, they're not wicked at all. They know that people such as yourself will respond if they're...
I'm not responding.
Well,
I'm only pointing out the fact. You know as well as I do that there are more than 200 unfilled vacancies in the General Hospital right now in the technical, radiostic, or whatever you call them, diagnostic staff.
But Jack, with a staff the size at Vancouver General Hospital, of course you're going to have unfilled positions. You've got unfilled positions probably in almost every hospital in the province and probably every aspect of government. You would have unfilled positions. That doesn't necessarily mean that service is being deteriorated at all.
You concede that the Royal Columbian is the key hospital for the Fraser Valley and for New Westminster.
Royal Columbian is a very important hospital, and it should be run in a very proper manner, and we're going to see if there's anything we can do to assist them.
But you will concede that they're going to have to cut back services on your demand that they pick up their consolidated deficits in the coming year.
I wouldn't necessarily agree they're going to have to cut back services. They may have to switch some priorities, possibly, but I think there are ways that efficiencies could be introduced, and I think they agree with that. I showed you earlier the correspondence from the board of directors, and they said they are most pleased to sit down and discuss how they can.
Well, that's just a routine pop reply.
Oh,
in the meanwhile, Dennis Koch had leaked the document which
well,
says...
Dennis Koch didn't leak the document. The document was leaked to Dennis Koch.
Do you happen to know who leaked it by any chance?
I've been told who leaked it, but I'd rather not.
You'd rather not name him?
Oh, no.
A prominent member of the medical profession.
Well, you never know. I might be on a stretcher one day or a table.
And at the same time, of course, you realize that by, well, I hope not, you realize that by cutting back on their budget, that you're going to cut back on the doctors' incomes at the Royal Columbian. And if there is no elective surgery, they won't be able to keep their highly paid doctors.
I'd see no reason why Royal Columbian Hospital would have no elective surgery. If you look at the list that they put forward as to what could be cut back, it suggests like the hospital would barely be operating. What you've seen there is the possibility of areas which could be considered to modify or cut back, but surely not all of them.
Mind you, I've got one message clearly from you this morning. You obviously feel that the standard of efficiency in the Royal Columbian is not as good as the General. The deficit is too high a percentage of their budget.
In our opinion, the deficit is too high a percentage, and there may be reasons for that. We're prepared to examine as to why those reasons may be.
All right, how much is your provincial health budget this year?
Just over $2 billion.
$2 billion. That's 1/3 of the provincial budget.
Just over 30%.
Don't you think this was a case for deficit financing so that you don't cut back?
No.
Well, look at some of the other things you've done. You've hit the poorest, the second poorest group on the dental plan, taken $10 million away from those on minimum incomes by a complicated changed mind formula on Denticare, correct?
Not complicated at all.
It is so too.
The Denticare program, when it was introduced, was probably overgenerous in the category 2, as it's referred to. giving them 100% coverage. It's been reduced to 75% coverage.
Well, people in human resources will not have to pay for Dentacare, correct?
They're 100% covered.
People with an income, taxable income of up to 2,180.
I think it's 20, yeah, about 2,800 now, I think.
2,800 will only get 75% of their Dentacare coverage.
Right.
Does every school child in BC under the age of 14 get free preventive Dentacare?
There's one package offered to every child under 14.
Is that where you feel you were too generous?
No, I think that's probably essential if the Dentacare program is going to produce better dental health in the children's side. We were too generous, I think, in offering the 100% package to the group of people who have now been reduced to 75%. Those were the big spenders in the first year of the Dentacare program.
Couldn't you have taken away from the parents of those over 14 who can afford to pay Dentacare?
I don't think it's a question of whether they can afford to pay it. It's a matter of whether the children would ever get in for that treatment if there was the
Who was it was too generous? Was that mayor?
Rafe was minister when the plan was introduced, but it was a government plan.
Okay, you've hammered a poorer section of the population on Dentacare.
They haven't been hammered, Jack. Come on, we're talking maybe of $30 a year.
$10 million we're talking about.
Well, not for one person.
No, but for a number of people.
Well, maybe $30 a year.
And then you up the premium.
That'll be two bottles of scotch for you.
You've upped the premium. $34.
Not for Dentacare.
You've upped the premiums for BC Medical.
Yes.
By how much?
$11.50 to $15 for a single person.
It's going to bring in $40 million a year extra.
It could be
That's what
near that amount, yeah. We have to bring in more revenue.
You've upped the room rates in hospitals too, haven't you?
By $1. Yeah.
That brings you in another $4 million.
Almost pays for breakfast.
And you've upped the emergency outpatient charges, haven't you?
Double them. $4.
$4.
Almost pays for the searchers.
Pays for the what?
Well, the Band-Aid or something. It doesn't pay for anything.
Sutures.
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 Thank you.
Spell it.
No, I'm not going to spell it.
No, you couldn't spell it. S-U-T-U-R-E-S.
You do very well.
Anyway, you're not going to give an inch in the Royal Columbian. That's my principal function this morning.
There is no problem with the Royal Columbian that can't be resolved.
Because you've got to say...
We're meeting with the board this morning at 11 o'clock. They have indicated in their correspondence to me that they'd be very pleased to solve the problems at the Royal Columbian Hospital. I don't think they're beyond solving.
Except that you
Jack,
have picked it on the Royal Columbian.
But you're dealing with information which has come to you by at least 3 hands and not from the board at all.
How do you know?
Well, you've never had any information that's been direct.
On this occasion
or other occasions? On this occasion,
you
of course.
don't know.
Well,
you're full of wind, if I
I've
may
seen
say
these
so.
photostatic copies.
column of the other day. Now, next question.
Yes.
I don't know what to do with you, Jimmy. After all, you were a broadcaster. Oh, yes. Hospital administrators' fees.
Salaries.
Salaries.
And
why are
fringes.
they so high?
I guess because the boards feel that they should be very generous to the people they hire as administrators of hospitals, and also because they're dealing in very large budgets, they're dealing with large number of people, they're dealing in an area that affects everyone.
Do you not realize that your hospital administrators in many big hospitals in BC get more than your top officials in Victoria?
Not only that, they get more than the Premier.
They get in excess of $100,000, some of them.
Not too many, but there's at least one who's in excess of
But a
$100,000.
number in excess of $85,000.
Oh, yes, that's relatively common.
Are you planning to cut back on these salaries as you announce wage restraints for the workers?
We don't pay them directly, and I don't know what control we have unless we were to modify legislation whereby administrators would be employed directly.
Would you like to see that legislation modified to cut back on the salaries of hospital administrators?
Hospital administrator salaries are in effect frozen at the moment, and they're going to be reviewed.
By you?
Well, indirectly by me.
In other words, you might take away the power of hospitals to set the salaries for their administrators.
We may encourage boards of hospitals to look at salary levels in a different way. Yeah. When we recently had competition for 3 assistant deputy ministers in the Ministry of Health, my information is we received no applications from people working as administrators of hospitals.
Because it would have been a cut in salary for them to come to the top in your office.
Significant cut.
More with Jim Nielsen, the cold-hearted man in charge of the BC Health Ministry, after the break.
For main engine ignition, 8, 7, 6.
With a budget this year of just under $2 billion, what's your overrun going to be?
About $55 million.
How much are you going to let it go up in the budget? 12%?
We hope to contain our costs to a maximum 12%.
So it'll be next year. It'll be 2,300,000,000 or something like that.
Something very close to that.
Right. When are you going to start to ration numbers for doctors? Now, maybe a lot of people don't understand this, but we've got 120 doctors coming out of UBC, all kind of doctors coming in, and the doctors, many of them are scared witless that you're going to start to allocate medical service plan numbers so that all doctors don't have an automatic fancy income. Yeah. How high is that on your priority?
We're working on that with the BCMA at the moment, and I expect to have a preliminary report by the 1st of July. What I would like to see, if it's feasible, and some say it is, some say it isn't, is to have the province divided into regions and by way of agreement with BCMA and other people, determine how many doctors in total we require within the region on a per capita basis, along with how many specialists we need and what specialties, and how they can be contained within a region. And then look at the various regions of the province and determine what specialties are required there and perhaps increase that quota for that specialty. We're over-doctored in Greater Vancouver, Victoria, the Okanagan, and we're seriously under-doctored in many remote areas of the province. We're adding about 400 doctors a year, a number close to that, between 300 and 400 doctors a year, of which some are from UBC, but not the...
Because at the moment, the young doctor coming out from UBC doesn't really have a chance to get into a practice unless you give them a priority on rationing if it comes to that.
Yeah, they don't have that at the moment. They, it's almost automatic. They receive a number from the Medical Services Commission, and they're in business. And that number gives them the opportunity to practice in the province and be paid for it. They can practice, of course, but they're a part of the insurance program. The BCMA have indicated they are very interested in the manpower problem. I think some of the doctors recognize that the more doctors coming into the province, the
less they're going to get.
Less they're going to get, although the costs, there's a formula you can develop with respect to costs. It's not it goes up in disproportionately as you have more doctors.
Each doctor costs you a couple of $100,000 for the facilities he uses, right?
Probably more than that when you think of the fees paid to the doctor plus the necessary facilities at hospitals and other institutions.
So what you want to do, ideally speaking, is to ration the input of doctors and locate them on a geographic basis for best service throughout the province.
We have been advised, and I think probably correctly, that we really have no opportunity to allocate a doctor or designate a doctor for a region.
There was a case on that.
But I think if, let's use a hypothetical situation. If there were a position available for a pediatrician in the Prince Rupert area,
right,
and we had a pediatrician come out of UBC, if that pediatrician were unable to open a practice in the Greater Vancouver area, he could be attracted to the Prince Rupert area for 1 or 2 or 3 years.
You could say, okay, you can get your number if you go.
There's an opening there.
You can get your number if you go there.
In effect, we could.
One thing I want to get clear for the
doctors don't like that.
No, of course they don't. They would call that dictatorial socialism, dictatorship, and they would all opt out and go to California.
I don't know if they'd opt out, Jack. I don't think we have any doctors in the province opted out of the plan.
Not even Ray March, who keeps advocating that other people opt out.
Well, sometimes it's easier to advocate others do things.
His income is going to be cut this year because of your cuts in the Royal Columbia.
I really don't know.
The amount of surgery is going to go down greatly. You know that.
I don't think so, Jack. I doubt it very much.
However, one shouldn't talk about individuals unless they happen to be.
Well, Dr. Ray March is president of the BCMA.
BC Medical Association, right? Okay, what's the law now on extra billing? You passed an act. Did you proclaim it?
Yes.
So extra billing is illegal in British Columbia?
It's illegal in British Columbia.
Will it stay that way?
Yes.
That's a firm decision of the government?
Oh, absolutely.
There's no way out for that?
There's no way out unless the Liberals or Conservatives form a party and it's part of their form a government at some time in the future, and it becomes part of their platform because the government has said absolutely no, and we passed legislation to that effect, and the opposition voted unanimously for that legislation. Those who are in the House.
Change of topic. Have you cleaned up the abominable mess yet at the BC Youth Development Centre at Willingdon?
Willingdon or Maples?
Maples.
Maples?
The BC Youth Development Centre is at Willingdon,
yeah, okay,
and
Maples.
We call it the Maples.
Right. It's.
Right. Have
I
you
think
cleaned up that mess yet?
I think so. Administratively, you mean? Is this what
whole
you're referring
thing.
to?
I mean, I remember...
Well, the physical problems weren't major. Those were relatively minor problems, and that's
You have a
been corrected.
26-bed secure unit, which is still standing empty because you have no occupancy permit because the fire doors are on upside down.
Backwards.
Backwards.
And a few other I think those physical problems have been resolved or are being resolved. The opening, I guess, will commence in April and for a few more months before it's in operation. But I think we've got it pretty well in hand now.
You realize that shortly after John Duffy conceded to me that there was ministerial indecision, bureaucratic confusion, mismanagement, medical nitpicking, and strikes by the, quote, strikes by the doctors, that he suddenly left the Forensic Psychiatric Services Commission.
He left the, not only the commission, but he left the unit as well.
Why did he leave?
He chose to leave. He apparently wanted to go on to newer and greater things, I guess. Duffy did a pretty good job in his tenure with the Forensic Psychiatric
Were you aware that
Commission.
there was also a group of child care workers down there who were adherents of a strange man called Pak Sabud from Jakarta, Indonesia?
No.
Did they have any influence on the treatment of the youngsters in the BC Youth Development Centre, these people?
I don't think they had any influence with respect to a philosophy, other than a professional philosophy.
Were you aware that child care workers appeared, and this was also confirmed by Dr. Duffy, appeared to be in charge of the medication of patients at BC Youth Development Centre?
That was the basis, I suppose, of the crisis that occurred between workers, psychiatrists, and others. And that's what led to a reorganization of the unit, which was placed under the Forensic Services.
Is the BC Youth Development Centre, the Maples, now a mental health institution to which the courts cannot send youngsters?
I think the courts will be able to send youngsters to the Maples once we're in operation. There's concern as to what the...
Well, you're in operation now.
Well, I know, but we're not in full operation. We haven't got all of the units functioning yet.
Have you got approval to hire the 75 people needed to staff the 26-bed secure unit?
That's been approved, yes.
That's been approved?
Yeah.
So that'll be one area in which you're not putting in your freeze.
Well, we're not putting a freeze in anywhere, Jack. That's...
You've got a freeze in government hiring now, I understand from Curtis.
No, not really.
Special permission is needed to hire people.
No, we've been hiring people, replacing people. We're not recruiting new positions, but there are some new positions that are going ahead. Maples is an example of that.
You will concede that the mess at the Maples was a classic example of bureaucratic confusion and medical nitpicking, which resulted in deterioration of services in that place.
No question that it was an example of that which is the problem of bureaucracy at any level. It's been, I think, straightened out to the point where the plant will be operational as it was envisaged.
And under the control of psychiatrists totally.
Well,
Medical control of the Forensic Psychiatric Service Commission.
Yes.
And when will a 26-bed secure unit have the doors on the right way up and the staff hired?
I hope it'll be in operation this fall.
This fall?
Yeah.
Would you give me the same guarantee that I got from Duffy that I can walk in and have a look at the place?
Sure, anytime.
Anytime?
Well.
No identification, naturally.
Reasonable hours.
To see if the place is working properly?
Sure.
Are you aware that in the Youth Detention Centre, the juvenile jail, there are at any time 10% of the youngsters there, average 60, so 6 any time, in need of, who are severely mentally disturbed?
I don't know what the percentage would be, Jack, but I know there's lots of those youngsters in the province, sure.
We sure failed in this business, haven't we, of looking after severely emotionally disturbed youngsters?
I would think as a society we have failed, and we've failed dramatically, and there's more and more of these youngsters being identified daily. But it's not just a matter of bureaucracy involved. I've talked to a lot of people who are in that field, and they find it very difficult to agree with each other as to what type of treatment is required.
I'm with you there, Jimmy.
And it's tough.
Your calls to Jim Nielsen, the Minister of Health, after the break. Before I go to the phones with Jim Nielsen, the Minister of Health, how is your long-term care working? How is your home care working? Is that an area where you've already, human resources have tightened up and the money's available? How much have you tightened up in your long-term care, your chronic care?
Well, our long-term care program has been expanding for the last 3 or 4 years. We opened, I don't know how many beds last year, but many hundreds of beds, and there's more planned for this year. The budget's continued to expand. The demand will probably never be met. The long-term care is a great success in the province. It's very, very costly. The demand by the people in the province seems to be inexhaustible. It's had some effect upon the occupancy of acute care facilities and extended care facilities, but not on a one-on-one basis.
Now, you gave the Royal Columbian 40 extra beds.
Extended care.
Extended care beds last year. Now, what about UBC Hospital? Half empty, they tell me, bed cost of $800 a day. Will that go down as McGear's folly, which is one of the crippling financial things on your back now as health minister?
Well, the hospital is probably one of the better places to be if you're really ill. It's a first-class hospital. It's very, very costly, very, very costly. We're speaking with them at the moment as to modifying budgets so they can pick up more staff and open more beds, but it's functioning reasonably well. Sure, it's very, very costly, but it's also a brand new plant.
You mean you're putting the squeeze on UBC Hospital to cut costs?
Well, we're putting the squeeze on all hospitals to cut costs.
But the Columbian's the only one where you say pick up your deficit in 1 year.
Columbia is the only one where documents have been leaked to you.
In other words, are you going to ask every deficit-ridden hospital in the province to make up its deficit this year?
We'll be requesting them to do that and examining whether it's possible.
Every hospital?
Every hospital will be asked to do it, yes.
In the case of the Columbian, are you prepared to take a second look and be not quite so tough?
We're not prepared to take a second look because we haven't completed our first look.
You're still at them?
We're not at them at all. We get along very well with the Royal Columbian Hospital.
You sent some new deputy minister over there who'd only been in the business 5 minutes.
Who was that?
I don't want to use a name like you don't want to use certain names. Okay, calls to Jimmy Nielsen. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Jack, I'd like to speak to Mr. Nielsen about the coverage for dental care for children.
Sure.
Yes.
Mr. Nielsen, I've just been wondering if you've ever looked at the duplicity of coverage involved in dental care for some children. We had a private dental plan, and we received very adequate coverage under this plan, and we were quite happy with it. And with the introduction of the new plan, we were forced to participate in it. And we find that the dentist doesn't want to participate. Now, this leaves us having to pay ourselves the dentist's fee and then submit to the government and wait for the return of our money. In the meantime, our private plan hasn't reduced its rates, and they are paying out less because, you know, there's a percentage of this now being paid by the government. And I feel that this is money that could, well, you know, if we had a choice of whether we participated just only in our private plan, this would release dollars that the government is paying on behalf of my daughter, which we really don't need. You know, this could go to somebody who really needs it.
We've had our first full year experience with respect to the Dentacare program.
I beg your pardon?
We've had our first full year's experience with respect to Dentacare. It's the first year we've had the opportunity to do a post-mortem, which we're just now beginning.
Yeah.
Your points have been brought to our attention by many other people,
Yeah.
including many in the profession itself who have indicated to us that they'd like to spend a considerable amount of time to discuss how some of these efficiencies could be introduced and perhaps better correlation between the government plan and the private plans to avoid duplication and to avoid financial relief from one plan to the other. So.
Because in some instances, the fact that the dentists don't want to participate is actually creating a hardship, you know, for people
Let me see
who
if
will
I
have to fork this
let me
money
see if
out
I understand
and then
this.
wait.
Miss, let me see if I understand this. If you have a child under 14 and you take it to the dentist, you must participate in Dentacare, whether or not you want to. Is that correct, Jimmy?
No one has to participate in Dentacare.
Well, why can't you just go to a private dental plan and say, take it out the private dental plan?
Well, there's agreements reached between some of the private dental care programs and Dentacare as to how costs can be covered. But there's nothing prohibiting an individual from paying their own bill if that's what they want to do. But
No.
we have offered.
That's not my point. I was told I had to participate in this plan because my dental plan will not pay.
Okay, I've got the message.
No, but I think the lady is saying that she was told she had to participate as part of the agreement with the other dental plan.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy.
Well, it may not be crazy, but that is one of the questions that's been brought to our attention, and it's going to be reviewed in some detail now that we finally have some figures and facts and the rest of it for the first year.
You could say arbitrarily, those covered by private dental plans need not participate in the dental care scheme for children of 14 and under.
We could, yes.
Go ahead from Victoria.
Hello?
Yep.
Mr. Nielsen?
Yes.
My husband has worked hard all his life, and now because of a health problem, he's virtually in enforced retirement. He's 60. And I would say he has worked harder than and made a greater contribution through taxes to this province than has your social credit government.
What's your point, ma'am?
For him to sit there and say that the cutbacks are okay for people on social assistance and that the 75% dental coverage is fine, the difference being equal to 2 bottles of scotch, we get $350 a month to keep 3 people.
Yeah.
Scotch is something that is never in this house. But maybe you social credit bunch, you get it for your cornflakes.
Well, what is your point? What is it going to cost you for dental work in the year?
I don't know what it's going to cost us for dental work, but I know that the one thing, because I am considered employable,
yes,
even although we are on social assistance, our medical isn't covered. We pay for our own.
What's your premium, ma'am?
We're on the minimum premium.
Well, what is the premium?
It's cost us $30 to $40 a year. It's not a hell of a lot, but to us it's a lot.
Yeah, all right.
If we have to pay this $30 deductible for dental, we won't be going to the dentist.
Well,
it's bad enough just trying to put
I
on the table.
Your net income is under $2,800, is it?
Yeah. Must be.
We're on just social assistance.
Well, you can't.
Oh, you're on social assistance. So if you're on social assistance, you're covered. If you're on social assistance, you're covered.
There's no standard of living when you're on social assistance.
Then you're covered, ma'am.
Sit there and say,
no, you're covered 100% then.
And that it's all right for people like us to meet this difference.
There is no difference if you're on social assistance, ma'am.
Pardon?
If you are a human resource client, you're covered 100%.
You don't have to pay. Is that right?
That's correct.
Why is it that we have to pay for our medical premium then?
Well, then you,
And
ma'am,
we have to pay for prescriptions.
ma'am, either you're under human resources or you're not.
But because I am considered employable, it doesn't matter that I am not working. I am considered employable, therefore we do not get medical coverage.
I see. All right.
And we do not get prescriptions paid for.
Why don't we take a number and you get somebody to look at the case?
Sure.
Take a number
No
and we'll
problem.
get somebody to look at the case after the break. Go ahead to Jim Nielsen, Minister of Health. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Webster. I'm incensed with Mr. Nielsen's remark, repeating what the last lady said, oh, come on, Jack, 2 bottles of scotch. It doesn't affect me too much, although we are on pension. We're not on welfare or whatever its equivalent is.
You're 50% covered, ma'am, are you?
At the moment, we're not covered at all.
I see. You're eligible then,
No,
I
it was
presume.
your tasteless remark.
My husband retired.
Apologize for the remark.
I'm sorry about that, ma'am.
But it's the remark.
All right.
There are many who do not buy bottles of scotch.
No,
we
it-
don't buy it ourselves. We don't buy any booze.
All right,
because we're teetotal.
$30 a year,
Our
and
pension
you can
stretch over the increases in hydro.
you can relate that to
privilege
anything.
of paying for our bills, our utility bills, and visa bills and such like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, ma'am, he apologizes.
Yeah.
He apologizes for the tasteless remark.
Tasteless
I
remark.
should hope so, and thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nothing
What
like
do you
an
do?
offhand remark to
Nothing
get you
like
into
enough.
trouble.
Well, $30 is $30. You can
Go ahead,
split it
please.
any way you want.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I want to make 2 points with Mr. Nielsen, please. Number 1, I agree entirely with organizing the system of doctors in the province so that all regions, all areas has an equitable treatment as possible. Whether the doctors like it or not, the moment they're paid from Victoria, they're on a type of socialized medical plan.
Oh, it's socialized, no question about that.
Now, number 2, the part that sticks in my craw is simply that you have been paying overruns at hospitals for several years.
Yes.
Now this year, you decide that you're going to investigate the financial operations of hospitals. Why in the world haven't you had this relationship and coordination with the hospitals of this province prior to this year? If you had, you would have had a much better grasp of the financial operations of all the hospitals in this province.
Well, I think there has been coordination, and I think there has been an attempt to coordinate it. I haven't had that responsibility except for this year, but we certainly are working very hard at that. I think there's been a certain lackadaisical attitude historically in the province with respect to the costs of operating hospitals, and I think we must be much more serious about what those costs are. It's too threatening to the system.
The fact is that last year you had spare money coming out your ears, and this year you're down.
That's right. That's part of it.
Thank you, sir. Good point. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Nielsen,
Hello there.
would it be feasible for your ministry to offer doctors who live working in rural and remote areas an incentive program such as better pay or cost of living variance and or transportation allowance?
Yes, very feasible, sir. And in some instances, attempts have been made to provide accommodation for doctors and some other attractions in the more remote areas. But yes, very, very feasible. We could, in fact, we do hire some doctors by way of contract to try to accommodate that.
But the biggest incentive would be not to get an MSP number.
I would think the biggest incentive to a doctor who wishes to practice in British Columbia is that there's no room available in other areas.
Are you still considering this MSP number on a fee-for-service basis, or might you go to the hated British system of a per capita fee?
If someone wished to bring that per capita method forward, we'd consider it, but I think a fee-for-service basis probably would be adequate.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes.
Mr. Nielsen.
Yes.
I would like to put a question to you. Out of all the unemployed workers in this province, we have a lot of bills, the medical plan.
Yes.
You find somebody getting out of work off of employers' paid plans.
Yes.
And facing high bills as they come off.
Yes.
Now, 3 or 4 months down the road, they don't have the money to pay those bills. Are they going to be kicked off the plan, or is there assistance coming for that?
Well, you would be, if you have an employer plan at the moment, and you lose that benefit, presumably then you would subscribe as an individual to the medical services plan. Mm-hmm. There is a standard fee for that at the moment.
Yeah, I realize that.
Subject to taxable income of the previous year.
That's right, and a lot of people aren't making the income they made last year.
No, that's quite right. But what I'm sorry, you're talking about being completely unemployed without any income of any kind, or?
Well, with what you get from unemployment, but that's not enough.
Yeah.
In other words, he's not continually covered by his employer's plan, and he's got to pay as a family up to $32 a month to maintain his coverage, I presume.
That's the system as it is now, yes.
And that's the way it's likely to stay, is it
I
not?
would think it'll likely stay that way.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes.
I work in a long-term care facility as a registered nurse. I'm concerned about untrained aides and practical nurses giving out medications. I think this is a dangerous practice. This is a fact in at least 3 facilities that I know of. And I'd like to ask Mr. Nielsen how he would like his mom to receive her pills from an untrained aide in long-term care.
Well, I think the question's completely irrelevant. The administration of that long-term care facility have total responsibility for any medication, and if someone is aware that medication is being provided to any patient by a person not skilled in that area, they have a responsibility to advise us.
Quite simple.
Absolutely.
There's a hospital inspector for the purpose.
Of course.
Go ahead from Duncan.
We wouldn't want an unskilled person performing surgery on someone either.
Go ahead, please, from Duncan.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Mr. Nielsen. You say that the dental children under 14 is completely free?
No, ma'am, there is a program offered once a year to children 1 to 14, which is part of 100% covered. The balance is 50% covered. This is a program which was developed in cooperation with the dentists to provide a yearly checkup for children, fluoride treatment, and some cleaning, and some very basic dentistry. The balance is 50% covered.
Well, is it this, even if you, like, are on a medical plan, like my husband's medical plan, we pay 20%, always have had to pay 20% of any dental care that any of my children have had, regardless of age?
Yeah, I think you can get all the details from your dental plan people, but it would be covered.
More with Jim Nielsen after the break. Go ahead to Jim Nielsen, the Minister of Health.
Hello, 2 questions. Could you tell me, are long-term staff paid less than active hospital staff, and what would the expenses be, relative to active hospital? And why are long-term facilities being closed down?
Well, I really don't know what you're referring to as an active hospital, ma'am.
Well, my husband's been in the Royal Columbian since the beginning of November, and he was hit by a train, and I spent hundreds of hours to augment what the hospital is doing, and at this point, he can do most of the things for himself. In other words, he can dress himself, shave himself.
Yeah, he's in extended care, I guess, isn't he?
More or less, but the doctor had said he would never get any better about 4 months ago, and at this point, I think he's almost ready for personal care. I keep having reassessments made.
Yes.
But he was supposed to go to extended care, and then he got better than extended care, and then he was supposed to go in the Florence Nightingale.
Yes.
Now that's being closed down. And
well, that's a private hospital, ma'am. That I think
I
is
see,
closed.
but the government does pick up some of the tab, don't
Oh, we pay rates to the hospitals on a per diem basis. They vary from institution to institution.
I think it's going to be $16.50 a day, is it not?
Well, I'm not sure what we would be paying that hospital. The Florence Nightingale Hospital have indicated they would like to close down. It's a private institution, but we do pay them a per diem.
I see. And what, like you said, that you're putting in a lot of new facilities.
Yes.
So the people from Florence Nightingale would go somewhere else, to Queens or somewhere like that, I guess.
Well, every time a private institution closes, we have to try and relocate the people elsewhere. In a metropolitan area, it's usually less a problem than in a smaller community where perhaps they only have the one facility.
See, my husband at this point is, as I say, he's in the medical part now. He's gone through quite a few of them, especially the...
Well, he's got a chance. Has he not got a chance of going into the extended care in New Westminster?
Well, at first I tried to get him into the extended care at Langley because I have to take a bus to visit him, and I see him. I go every day, which is a lot of traveling, but nevertheless, it's been worth it.
Anyway, he will get care, won't he, Jimmy?
Oh, he'll get care. There's no question about that.
Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hello there.
That's you.
Yeah. Listen, I was just wondering if Mr. Nielsen had any figures on the numbers of people that just go to physicians, for what turn out to be basically just psychosomatic type of...
You mean wasted doctors' visits?
Wasted because, they're not... It's like anything. Once you pay into something, you're going to...
Okay, do you keep a close eye on the doctors through the patterns of practice?
We do. We keep a very close eye and have profiles on what services are offered by doctors, but there's a really major problem for government to attempt to interfere in what is the best treatment for a patient.
Well, that I can understand.
But sure, there's no question there is a percentage of wastage, and as long as you have any program that is free, there is going to be a large number of people who are going to make use of it. But I would think it's a relatively small percentage of actual visits by people who go to the doctor really for
I've heard figures like 80%,
social need. Oh, no.
80% of the people that are in doctor's offices.
No, I shouldn't.
Nowhere near that. It probably closer to 5%.
Have you any new deterrent fees in mind? Have you any new deterrent fees in mind?
Not for this year.
Not for this year?
No.
Does that mean for next year?
No, not necessarily.
Well, that's just a Weasley answer.
No, it isn't.
Why
no,
didn't you just say no?
All right, no.
Go ahead, please.
Does that mean?
Why don't you ask the correct question?
Have you any new deterrent fees in mind?
No.
No. Go ahead, please.
Is that me?
That's you.
Fine. I address this to Mr. Nielsen. I've been actually involved with emotionally handicapped people, And I attended a meeting at the District 43 last year, and the speaker was somebody from the probation department. And after a 6-month study where he traveled all the way across British Columbia, it came down to the point where the whole analysis, after been speaking for an hour with about a 60-page brief, that the probation officers didn't know what Willingdon was. So finally, I pinned him down after 3 questions. I said that when people are remanded into Willingdon for a psychiatric report before they are back in court again, and they are incarcerated for those 30 days, I said, how much of that 30 days would you estimate that the psychiatrist spent with a particular client? And he said, an hour to an hour and a half.
That's about right.
Well, but I mean, you're saying that they're remanded for a psychiatric report, not necessarily for psychiatric therapy.
That's right. But if they're incarcerated there for 30 days,
sure,
you take, let's say, 2 hours,
yeah,
and count the number of hours that the taxpayer is paying. That for those people, at the last figures I heard, for instance, in Ocala, is about $30,000. So maybe be less in Willingdon. But can you imagine the enormous cost to the taxpayer to get 1.5 hours or 2 hours of psychiatric evaluation?
Hold on.
Yeah, there's more to it than psychiatric evaluation. In many of these cases, it's in effect a remand center for some of them.
It's a juvenile jail.
And the psychiatric examination is a requirement of the court. That
Part of the examination of the court. But I misunderstand.
It's not a psychiatric unit where they're being treated.
No, that's correct. 10% of them need psychiatric treatment at any time, but that's beside the point.
That's one of the biggest problems we have.
The Children's Hospital, how far is it behind schedule?
Well, I think we're opening it next month. The official opening, I think, is next month, so it can't be very far behind schedule.
Have you got the money for equipment allocated, or is it?
Yes, as far as I know.
As far as you know?
As far as I know, there's no
I
problem.
had the rumor that you didn't have the money allocated for the equipment.
Well, equipment is always the last thing that's resolved in any hospital. Frequently, there are very long delays in actually finding the equipment. But I don't think there's any financial problems with Children's Hospital in Warwick.
Well, you would know.
Well, as far as I know, there's no problem.
Because you've got to raise the money for the hospital society that runs it, haven't you?
We have to raise the money, but it's been allocated, as far as I know.
Go ahead, please.
That'll be the best children's hospital in Canada.
Go ahead, please.
Hello. I was just wondering, Mr. Nielsen, all year every place I've been, you're cutting back and cutting back and cutting back.
Right.
You're cutting back on the home care services.
Well, we increased the budget by 44% last year.
When I came out of the hospital this year, my husband is paralyzed.
32 to $55 million, I believe.
Yeah, well, my husband is paralyzed, and I went in the hospital for surgery.
Yes.
When I came out, I thought I was entitled to a few extra hours.
All right.
But evidently I wasn't.
Well, what was the evaluation, ma'am?
The young lady that was here, I think she needs a course in public relations.
That's quite possible.
Because what happened, I just come out of the hospital when she came back into the house, and she upset me, something terrible, that the other people in the house had to run and get me pills to bring me back to my sanity.
Yeah.
But I take him to Variety Treatment Center, my husband, and that's cut back. I now have to pay $250 for him to swim. They wanted, when I was in the hospital, I've been in the hospital twice last year and once this year. Everybody says, put him in a swing bed, put him in a swing bed. And I say, no, you know?
Well, ma'am, I don't
know how you cope with these things.
House.
But, ma'am, what does the doctor say?
The doctor says that I would be unable to do anything from 6 to 8 weeks.
All right, yes.
The person that came to assess me even called the doctor.
Yes.
And then she comes and says I wasn't entitled to any extra hours, that everything was getting cut back.
Well, how many hours do you have, ma'am?
4 hours a day.
And what do you feel you require?
Well, I know I require a little bit more than that, Mr. Nielsen, because I can't even vacuum.
Yeah.
Well, my dear, what can you suggest?
I do the best I can, and my family support me. You know, my daughter does the best she can, but everybody works.
Yes.
Okie dokie. It's significant you're not getting hammered on the general thing, but you're getting nagged on the smaller things because of your trimming.
No, we're not trimming, Jack. The demand has increased so much for homemakers care and others that you can even increase your budget by 45%. You're still not satisfying everyone.
It's hard to be anything.
We get complaints from people on homemaker care and home care because they wouldn't clean up after a party or something. Well, we can't allow that to happen. Sure, we're cutting back in certain instances where we believe it is not going to affect the health of the person. We have to look at health first.
And you'll always have some young nit of a newly trained worker who'll come in and be rude to an old couple.
Well, I don't know whether they're rude
well,
or not.
Of course it happens. You know it happens as well as I do. The woman thinks my husband's paralyzed, and this little skip of a girl doesn't think I need extra
that lady
time.
could contact me, and I would look into it.
You will, eh?
Sure.
Go ahead from Victoria. Last call. Go ahead. What? That's you in Victoria. Come on. Where is he?
You frightened him.
He must be a social credit friend of yours. Sure. I'll see if he's there. Hello there. Are you there? Well, speak up.
From Duncan.
That's you. Speak up. From Duncan, is it?
Yes. Okay, listen.
I was told it was from Victoria. That was the reason for the confusion.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
I've got a question for Mr. Nielsen regarding inflation. I mean, every time they raise a rate or increase a fee or something, it's contributing to inflation. Are they supposed to be containing it?
Is that? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Well, I suppose all higher costs contribute to inflation, but Jack, as you have said so many times, perhaps one of the most significant influences on inflation is our progressive income tax system in Canada.
I haven't said that.
Haven't you said that?
Ever on any single occasion.
I thought you had.
Anyway, what are you going to do with the Hospital Employees Union this year who only want 73% in 1 year?
The HLRA are, I presume, going to sit down and negotiate
They've offered them
settlements with them.
3.5 and 4.5.
Yeah, that's
Do you
somewhat
anticipate an HEU strike in the system this summer?
No.
Can you cope with it if there is one?
I think we could probably function reasonably well, but I don't anticipate a strike by any of the health employees this year.
When you go and meet the people from New Westminster today, will you kindly be a little more understanding and charitable than your officials have been up to now?
I think our officials have been very understanding. I might have to look after the charitable aspects.
Good. It's a matter of dogma and faith in most big cities in the world that we all hate paying parking fees and we all hate tow truck drivers. Absolutely detest them. And there have been more face-to-face barneys with tow truck drivers than there have been with any other group of individuals in the city of Vancouver in my long time here. However, you could have knocked me over with a feather when I saw what Impark are going to do to us if we overpark on a ticket which we buy from a machine in how many... First of all, here is Paul Clough, Vice President of Impark, and Barbara Fowler, also of Impark. How you keeping, Barbara?
Fine, thanks.
Paul, how many parking lots?
We have over 200, Jack.
How many spaces?
Close to 20,000.
Now, we're talking about private parking lots.
Yes, we are.
Are we talking about tiered lots or open area lots?
Just open area lots, ones that are controlled with a parking meter.
That's where you go in and you put in, how much is it now? 75 cents, a buck?
Oh, it averages around 50 cents to $1.
All right, now, I go into your parking lot now and I get my ticket, right?
Yes.
And I keep my copy of my ticket in my pocket, right?
Yes.
Because there is a detachable piece.
There is.
And I put it on the windscreen of my car. What happens if I'm 5 minutes over?
Nothing.
When do you get after me? For how long must I be over in my parking lot before you hammer me?
Presently now, the City of Vancouver will tow away your car after a 2-hour grace period is given.
You mean on the streets?
On our lots. However, with this ticket system, we would allow a half-hour grace period.
Let me get this. If I leave my car at the moment for 2 hours over my allotted time on your ticket,
yes,
you tow it away.
That's correct.
Have you changed that?
Yes, I have.
What's the new system?
The new system is that you would be issued a parking ticket that would require you to pay $15 as for your parking.
After a 30-minute overlap.
Grace period, that's correct.
A 30-minute grace period. So therefore, if I'm more than half an hour late, you'll give me a ticket issued for unauthorized parking on private property, payment $25.
Payment is $15, Jack.
It says here payment $25.
However, it does say that, but we expect payment of $15 if it's paid within 48 hours.
If I pay it within 48 hours, do you mean postmarked within 48 hours or delivered to your office within
Postmarked
48?
will
Postmarked within 48 hours, I get away with $15.
That's correct.
Now, supposing I don't pay the ticket.
Oh, we're going to send you a second notice, and failure to pay that then we would take the necessary legal action to collect it.
What would that be?
Small debts court.
You're not going to tow my car away if I bring it in again?
If it was found in one of our locations in the future, yes, we would.
Second time round?
Yes.
Not if you had a parking ticket.
Say that again?
Not if you had a parking ticket in your car.
Nah, this is going to get complicated.
Oh.
Let me start all over again. If I park in Park and I'm more than 30 minutes over, I'll get a ticket like this, which says on pay 25 bucks. But if I pay it to you within what period?
48 hours, it's $15.
I won't have to pay 50.
Right.
And the slate is clean.
That's right.
All is forgiven. I can come to your parking lot again. But if I come again to your parking lot with one of these tickets against me, what do you do?
If you have bought a valid ticket for parking at that time that you go into the lot, you're left alone.
In what circumstances will you tow me away if I come back a second time and say have overstayed my second ticket?
Then we tow you.
Then you'll tow me. And where will you tow me to?
To the compound.
And what will it cost me to get my car back then?
$35. Plus cab, plus inconvenience.
$35 plus cab, plus bad temper, plus
Whatever.
That's right.
Are all these parking lots untended parking lots?
That's correct, yes.
So I can't pick a fight with anyone then and there, can I?
No, you can't.
So I've got nobody to fight with. Now, does this mean you're putting all these offenders onto a computer?
Yes, we are, Jack. We haven't got it completely rolled into a computer yet, but we will.
Geez, that's pretty rough, isn't it?
Well, Jack, we've been looking for an alternative to the present system of controlling violators, being towing, and we believe we have it with this.
Now, let's be quite practical. Supposing somebody's out on the town for the night,
yes,
and they decide to leave their car in your parking lot,
yes,
instead of driving home impaired and killing 5 people.
Yes.
Must that person who is unwisely drinking then say to himself, okay, by leaving my car overnight, it's going to cost me 15 bucks?
Yes.
Is that the attitude one must take?
Yes.
How has the public reaction been to this?
It's been very favorable, Jack. Very favorable, yes.
Do you have any legal right to sue on this basis?
According to our solicitors, yes, we do.
I don't know. I don't use parking lots downtown very much, thank God. But you're not using this system in any of your lots where you have attendants?
No, we're not.
In other words, as long as there's an attendant there, I can come back a day later and pay the additional charge?
Yes, you can. Okay,
if you have any questions for our guests here, Barbara Fowler from Impark and Paul Clough, spelled C-L-O-U-G-H, Vice President of Impark, after the break. To Paul Clough of Impark. I mean, really, I didn't think that many people tried to beat your system. Have you any figures on how many people try and beat the system by overparking on, say, a 2-hour ticket or a 4-hour ticket?
Well, in most cases, it certainly is a minority that do try to beat the system, and it has ranged upwards of 20% of the people at parking lots will try to beat it. So
that's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Now, what about Harcourt and Rankin, the defenders of the people's rights? They once stopped another system whereby private parking lot were going to lock the wheels of cars. Have you taken this up with Harcourt and or Rankin?
Yes, we've taken it up with both city officials before we started in on the program, and they support it.
In other words, they don't object it?
None whatsoever.
Now, I have one complaint, which I think has already been dealt with. This ticket looks not unlike an official police document.
Well, Jack, we tend to disagree. The police parking tickets now are quite a bit different.
Same color?
No, they're not.
Not even the same color?
Not even the same color.
Shows you how law-abiding I am. I haven't had any tickets in a long, long while indeed. Now, so therefore, first time round, if I don't bring my car within the range of your tow tucks or the second offense without a ticket, you will sue me in small debts court for the money.
Yes, sir.
That's going to cost you a bundle. Will it be worth it?
I believe it will. I believe we'd like to set a precedent, Jack.
Okay. go ahead, please, to Messrs. Clough and Fowler of Impark. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
My daughter was visiting out here from Calgary, and she borrowed our car and went into Vancouver, parked in one of these parking lots, and she bought a ticket and put it on the windshield, but she didn't put it the right way up. She hadn't noticed that she had put it on wrong. She got one of these notices that she owed $25 or $15 if she paid it right away, so she put the check into an envelope with the ticket and mailed it to them before she went back to Calgary, which left a very unfavorable thing in her head about Vancouver. Anyway, afterwards, my husband, they had got a notice that they had searched the car number in Victoria and found it was our car, and now they send us a bill for this $15, which she had already paid.
Was this to Impark?
Yes.
Paul.
Well, Madam, we'd be pleased to investigate that a little bit further if we could.
My other daughter is already investigating it.
Well, here's the Impark guy. Take a phone number, would you please, Tyra? Take a phone number.
We will call you back, ma'am, because that I can't say what has happened over there unless your sister or your daughter
Didn't send the ticket with it.
Didn't send the ticket with it. That is a possibility.
Yes, she did.
And did she send it right away, madam?
Yes, she did. She sent it before she went back to Calgary.
Well, fine. We'd be pleased to call you.
Okay, give Tyra a number, and Barbara or Paul will call you.
All right.
And maybe they'll get off your back. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Jack and dear Gap.
Yeah.
I want to know if I want to park in that lot for the 8 hours. Do I buy the 4 tickets, or what do I do?
Completely dependent on the rates, madam.
Well, if they're 2 hours for $1 or whatever they are.
Yes, you can certainly buy 4 tickets and park for 8 hours.
You can't turn them up, and it's still okay. Nobody has, I don't have to go out at halftime or anything like that to redo the ticket.
No, you don't, madam. You can buy them all at once.
Okay, now are these parking lots free on Sunday, or what's the rule for Sunday?
No, unfortunately, madam, we have charges for parking on a 7-day-week basis.
So it's the charges stay the same for Sunday as well?
Yes, that's correct.
Same for Sunday. And don't forget, save all your quarters, because if you're going to park for 8 hours, you're going to need how many quarters?
Depending on the rate again, but you will need at least 8 quarters.
At least 8 quarters, minimum of 8 quarters. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
That's you, ma'am.
Yes. What happens if you put your money in and no ticket comes out?
Does that happen?
Well, I would like to ask the gentleman if the Impark is at the Vancouver General Hospital by the emergency exit.
No, we're not, madam.
Oh, okay. Because that happened to me once. I put 75 cents in and got no ticket.
They plead not guilty.
He's not guilty.
Not guilty. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Oh.
That's you, sir.
Yes, if it comes down to where a car has to be towed away, if there's risk of damaging the car, will the tow truck driver just yank it up and take it away, whether or not he damages a transmission or any exterior part of the car? Do they care about that at all or not?
Well, we would hope that they would use their own discretion, but this is one of the other reasons why we have elected to go with a ticket system versus towing.
Because there's less potential damage to the car, isn't there? Otherwise, most of them can get into any car in 10 seconds, of course,
yes,
with
they
the fancy keys. Same sets of keys as car thieves have. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yeah.
Is that me?
That's you.
Okay. Actually, I think it's advantageous for Impark to have cars towed off their lot because at the end of the month, if you they'll receive the money back for that. Do they not receive the $2 back, $3 or $4 for each car towed, like the towing company at the end of the month would maybe give you a check for say $3,000, $4,000, $5,000,
No, sir, definitely not.
He's asking you if there's a kickback with a towing company.
There certainly is not.
Well, you see, there were in other areas of the Vancouver towing business, which has always been very messy, suspicions of kickbacks. The more they towed away. I remember when they used to keep the tow trucks parked inside the courthouse. You know, a whole fleet of them, and at 4 o'clock on the button, out they'd go and clean the streets.
Yes.
Wasn't a bad system. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I have 2 things to say.
Yes.
First of all, it does happen quite a few times where you put money in and you don't get a ticket out of the machine. It's happened to me a number of times. Second of all, with the amount of money that they do make and they want them saved by collecting, why don't they invest some money in better equipment where the machines will accept dollar bills or give change. Like I've seen a couple of machines lately that'll accept other things besides quarters. But why don't they invest and put machines that'll take? Who walks around with a bank in their pocket for quarters?
One, do you have change machines?
No, we don't, Jack, right
No?
now. They're too subject to vandalism and theft, and we haven't introduced them yet. But we do have parking equipment that will take and accept multiples of change. As far as
Did you ever try to park and then find out that you don't have enough change, and then try to go around? You could go for blocks, and the stores refuse to give change. Why don't you just put machines that could take, let's say, dollar bills?
That's why I was just explaining, caller, that they are subject to vandalism, and certainly the cost of the equipment is very high. It would necessitate us increasing the rates as well.
Right now, what's the highest, the dearest lot there is now in town?
There is a lot in town that has parking rates of $1.50 an hour.
It's not yours?
We have one that is.
You have one too?
Yeah.
Which one is it?
It's Vancouver Centre.
Vancouver Centre. $1.50 an hour? Or
Yes,
part that off?
Yes, sir.
My God, cheaper to hitchhike. Okay, let me see if I've got this right before I let you go. If I am more than 30 minutes over on my paid ticket with a number displayed in an in-park lot, you will write out a ticket, description of the car, and put it on my windshield. Right?
Correct.
If some smart aleck takes it away, I don't even know you're trying to give me a ticket, do I?
Well, you would, because we would trace your vehicle through motor vehicle branch, and we would send you a second notice.
So therefore, I would not then have time to pay it for $15. If I pay it within 48 hours, it's $15.
If they did call us, we would be pleased to reduce it to $15.
All right, $25 if I don't pay it within the limit normally. Next time in, if I have a proper ticket, you will do what? If I have a proper ticket next time in, what will you do?
Let you park.
Let me park?
Sure.
Next time in, if I don't have a proper ticket, you will do what?
Tow you away.
Tow me away. And you'll have all these numbers computerized and you'll be able to punch up right away and say, he owes us 5 tickets.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's right.
Well, I'm glad you came down this morning because we're liable to get a lot of phone calls about it, and at least I understand it quite clinically. My thanks to Barbara Fowler and my thanks to Paul Clough of Impact.
Thank you, Jack.
I'll be back after the break. Might have time to take a couple of free-for-all calls on this, but there's a little story that's been sitting on my desk, and as a taxpayer in West Vancouver, which I am, I just wanted to draw it to your attention. You know, it's not an awful lot of money. It's only $92,000. But it involves the ICBC coverage of much of West Van's vehicle fleet. You know, presumably the mayor's car and everybody else's cars and trucks. But in May 1981, West Vancouver, the municipality thereof, issued a check for $92,370 payable to ICBC in care of a local insurance agent, North Vancouver insurance agent. That was May 81. Then the ICB went on strike and things got kind of slow, you know, to catch up on it. In February, the local insurance agent declared bankruptcy. Now, the check had happened to be drawn in West Van's Royal Bank account, cashed and deposited in the Bank of BC account. And some of the money went to an insurance company and the rest, $70,000, is missing. The RCMP Commercial Crime Squad has completed its investigation into this insurance agent, and the matter is now being studied by Regional Crown Counsel. Charges are possible. The check was made out to ICBC, but it was cashed somehow or other. And West Van assures us that all their vehicles are properly covered by, even though the fact is that $70,000 or more of the $92,000 check is still missing. I've got a suspicion that ICBC are a little bit unhappy about this. Just one of those things. Now, another thing I must do for the record is when, what was his name? Cleghorn, Mr. John Cleghorn of the Royal Bank was on the other day. He was asked a very perceptive question by a viewer who wanted to know whether or not there was a charge if you renewed your short-term mortgage. And John Cleghorn said, there is no charge. He was kind enough to phone back and tell me that that was an inaccurate piece of information. For the Royal Bank, when you renew your short-term mortgage, kind of roll it over for another term, or whatever, there is a renewal fee of $50 payable. Now that's the Royal Bank rate. I don't know the rates of the other banks at all. Now, what else we got? We've got a minute to go. How can I possibly sit and talk for a minute? I can tell you, oh yes. I'll take the break and I'll fill after the break. Got a very nasty letter from somebody the other day saying that all they ever watched in this program was Wyatt and that they can't stand Webster because he does too many politicians. Well, you know, you can see Steve anytime you want. Tomorrow, well, I hate to tell that nag, whoever it was, that I've got a politician on tomorrow. But we'll have something bright as well from Steve. So Steve is hereby a notice, get something bright tomorrow. Well, that little old lady will hate you, Steve. Talking of social events, where's Pamela? Oh, yes, we've got a honeymoon couple in the studio this morning. Jimmy and Jerry Mason. They were married on Saturday. They didn't expect to be in camera. That's Pamela in the back. The one with his tongue sticking out is Pamela. That's Jimmy, her wee brother, and that's Jerry, his bride. They were going to go on a Caribbean cruise, but something went wrong, and so they spent their Monday morning passing the time at the Webster show. When you're newly married, it doesn't really matter what you do anyway. It's all great fun. What else? What? Space shuttle, yes. Everything okay. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. precisely.
We have main engine ignited. Houston, Nelson, Pauline, mission control confirms roll maneuver started.
Health Minister Jim Nielsen on the cutbacks, and check at midnight.